It's a distinct pleasure to introduce our closing keynote speaker. So, and there you are. Hello, bienvenue. Thank
Hello,
you.
Gigi.
So thank you for joining. So, Dr. Alexis Genin, he's head of the research and technology development at the Paris Brain Institute. So we're hearing from another prestigious and amazing, renowned institute coming out of France, who you combine scientific creativity and therapeutic purpose in a variety of areas and emerging technologies at your institution. And so we're going to hear today about the approach to health innovation from your lens, and you as a human. So you're a neurobiologist by training. Alexi has, for everyone who has not read your bio, I have to, because we have science and business here at the table with your keynote presentation. And he's a neurobiologist by training, research background, actually has had private sector experience. So Smithkline-Beecham, which is now GSK, and then to EISAI. You've operated the international growth of a French-based diagnostic company. Its technology acquisition strategy, but also have participated in the launch of Inserm's private subsidiary for technology transfer and seed funding for startups. So you know all about that. Maybe we could ask you that question too, from the end of the last panel discussion. But at the Paris Brain Institute, this man has created a 25% strong unit, a drug screening program and platform, a hospital living lab, a medtech development arm, and 3 startup incubators. So he's very plugged in all over the world, and in particular in France. We're really lucky to have you here today to share a little bit more about ICM, your approach, and when I think of France and I think of neuroscience and I think of business strategy, I think of Dr. Alexis Génin. So I want the world to be able to hear about, because you have a unique lens into what innovation is because of your scientific roots too. Couple that with business strategy and neuro focus with your institute that you're representing. I think we're in for a treat today.
Well, thank you so much for the kind introduction, Gigi. You actually make it look more impressive than it is. But thank you so much. Thank you also. I have many thanks. Thank you for to the organizer for inviting me. Thank you for teaching me how to add this very corporate background. And thank you for the super kind introduction, and especially Gigi, I did love your introduction of France and how beautiful the country is. You know, we have a writer in France called Sylvain Tesson who was saying that France is a paradise where people think they live in hell. And so we needed your introduction to realize how beautiful and how nice the environment is. Cool. So yeah, let's discuss neuroscience. And you also said it's a keynote, but you told me it's just about entertaining people. So I'll try to do that. It's not going to be technical at all. And I was willing to illustrate the great panelists you heard. I've mentioned all the initiative, the French 2030 plan, and all the investment that the public plus private that has been modeling French landscape in the last 10 years. So let's deep dive into one example of how the money is used. Because of course, when you get a lot of money, the pressure is to use it wisely and with return on investment. So let me see if you have been able to teach me correctly how to share my screen. That should be this. Please tell me it's working.
Yes.
So do you see a very old building, something like 400 years old? You do?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so let's start. So this is Salpêtrière Hospital. It's in Paris. It has been built at the time of Louis XIV. And today, within the Salpêtrière Hospital, you've got a couple of change, let me see. And this is the Paris Brain Institute. So this illustrates kind of the change on the way we think of medicine and innovation. And this building has been launched something like 10 years ago. It's roughly 100,000 square feet. And the specific stuff in the way it was built is something that Stephanie has emphasized, which is interdisciplinarity, making people who would usually not meet and work together in neuroscience. And for that, if I click, I should have that. So we have more than 750 researchers. And important thing is that in the young researchers, 80% are not French, international people. So that's 45 nationalities. And in these researchers, you've got the usual biologists, kind of the usual suspects, but you have more than that. We do have physicists, we have mathematicians, very strange people, but they're still here, and even some seasoned philosophers help us think forward on what we are doing. That's one. Then we have in-house within the building. I don't know if you will see my mouse right here, but it's, let me see if I can do something. Well, I won't be able to use that, but first level here, it's basically a clinical facility where we run something like 80 early stage trial. And second floor is a bioincubator. Actually, the first one we created because we have two more now. Where more than 150 entrepreneurs, startups, and spin-off from the institute. And the mass of knowledge of the brain and early discoveries is up there. Okay. So now, why neuroscience and why creating this kind of environment, which is actually, I have to emphasize, this is only one example in neuroscience of what France has been able to build in different areas. Why neuroscience? Well, first, it's the first cost of healthcare in the world, by far. In Europe, only nearly 1 billion of cost every year. It must be kind of same figures, maybe more in the US. First cause of invalidity. And if you look at medication moving up so fast, especially in mental health, one thing if we link to philosophy, is the first perceived threat to dignity, which is kind of the meaning of life when you are affected by Alzheimer, other diseases, or mental health diseases. And the situation is that you see that on the upper hand of the slide, the aging of population is going to dramatically impact the number of dependent people having Parkinson, Alzheimer, and other diseases. It's the first wave. We have no way to face that as of today. We have no way to face that because we have symptomatic treatments and we have not been able to decode these diseases and be able to be transformative in the way we address them. And if that's not enough, what you will see here is the rise and the surge for mental health, the internet search for mental health services from 2013 to 2020, which is before COVID. And this is the impact of COVID on suicidal thoughts, depression, and anxiety. It's roughly multiplied by 3, okay? And we had some hope that this will not last and everyone will be happy again, and it's basically not the case. So it's kind of a major societal trend that old people will get older and will get more disease, and young people will get more mental health issues. And basically, as of today, we're not able to face that, okay? And one of the reasons of that is that the industry sector has found the field so complicated, so hard to tackle, that they have massively disinvested the field in the last couple of years, at least from 2010. Things are changing, and okay, you may be a bit depressed after what I said. Now is the hope. What you see on the left-hand side is the modelization of a cortical column, which is the basic data engineering unit of your brain in the cortex, which we're now able to completely model by informatic tools. And on the upper side, this wonderful golden stuff that you see is a transpolarized brain, where you basically can see the highways and the small roads transmitting information from one part of the others. And this kind of new technologies that we've been developing in the past 10 years have completely changed our ability to predict efficiency of drug development, but also medtech development and digital health prevention programs. The consequence is straight. This is the brain tech investment trend in the US. And maybe as always, we're a bit late and a bit lower, but the trend is following in Europe. So that's good time. So from the ashes of the industry, large industry development, number of startups have grown and have been able to go to the clinical stage and even to the market. Okay, so now what we are currently building is an ecosystem with a couple of guys in the area, and that's going to be one of the national bio cluster, Brain and Mind. So we've got the Paris Brain Institute, you remember the picture. We've got the vision, we've got the psychiatry with fundamental foundation. And only these three guys together, if you look at the kind of critical mass and what they've been able to deliver in the last couple of years, 1,000 research personnel, massive presence of patients, it's gold, national reference centers for rare diseases, but the most important stuff, they are able to translate good science into entrepreneurship. So more than 80 startups in the last 10 years, and we've raised, and that's VC raising, right? It's not public money, more than 1 billion euros in the last 10 years. So it's a starting point, but it's kind of, we trust now that we have found the secret recipe or the sauce that will help us scale up for more technology development. This is what we think is the secret sauce. Right-hand side, top-notch science, but you find that everywhere. Okay, Boston has plenty with Harvard and MIT of super deep science, and we're not bad actually. So we can go from developmental biology to translational approaches. What we do have, and which is special, is that we have this translational research within hospital, and that's a big change. So when 50 meters from you, you have access to patients, you've got a fast track to understand in depth the disease. And if you add to that lower end of the slide right here, technology platforms, clinical grade, so like ecological monitoring of patient, living labs, fast prototyping, bioincubators, you have what we think is the secret mix of the proximity of actors to make this famous circle, starting from the patient, and on the right-hand side, a very good knowledge of the disease because you start from samples. You don't start from mice. You start from human samples. Understand, demonstrate that things are working, and then run back to clinical development, which is the main killer of success and that we have to improve, and then access into care. Okay? So this is the general concept that we are scaling up now in France with the Brain and Mind Bio Cluster, which is very new venture. So we do hope it will be a success, but as of today, we only have high hopes. And I would like to focus for the remainder of the time on examples, so that you see what kind of stuff we are doing. So self-playing doctors. There's a terrifying disease called MLD, metachromatic leukodystrophy. Okay, it comes from a family. This is a kind of disease where you have an healthy child, which basically in a couple of 3-4 years, by the age of 6 or 7, becomes like a small puppet, unable to move, with a death usually by the age of 10, 12. The reason of the disease, and you can see this young patient, is super simple, but curing it is super hard. I'm sorry if it's too simple for all the scientists around, but metabolism in the brain and elsewhere in the body is about one compound becoming another compound, and another compound, and another one, all that being the building blocks of your biology, right? And the transition from one compound, one protein, one lipid or whatever to another is, this transition is made by an enzyme, which will catalyze the change in one form to the other. This young patient have a deficiency in one enzyme called ARSA. And it's like if you are blocking the road of transformation of some lipids, specific lipids called the sphingolipids, and one of them, sulfatide, is accumulating into the brain and basically blocking all the transformation, all the flow of information for the fibers. So the concept is simple. If you want to repair, you need to bring back the enzyme to the brain, and that's tough. So you can do that using a vector. And what we've been doing is something different. We basically have encapsulated cells into very small devices, which can hold 2 million cells, and these cells will produce the enzyme in the brain of patients. And the way it works, as usual for us, is to start to make the proof of concept of that using preclinical models, and we've done that by subcutaneous injection of the device. It works incredibly well, and so we basically clean the brain of all these sulfatides and restore a normal phenotype. So for the non-scientist, it means the way you behave and what is visible from you. So that's a cell therapy. And the key stuff on that is about the device that we've been developing with friends, and that we can place in different places of the brain in a minimally invasive way. So that's surgery plus kind of cell engine therapy to produce that. And we aim at moving to clinical proof of concept very quickly. Second example. Okay, I think the video is a bit long. So we have a very big issue. So what you see here on the video is a brain tumor, the blue stuff, right? Okay, when you want to cure this kind of tumor, you need the drugs, the chemicals to enter the brain. It seems like easy, but it's not, because the chemicals go for the blood flow, and within the blood flow, between the blood flow and the brain, there's what we call the BBB, blood-brain barrier. It's kind of the Great Wall of China, preventing anything bad from moving into your brain. So nutrients will go through, many compounds, many therapies will not. It's to avoid viruses to go into your brain. So it's very nice when you don't have a problem, but it's kind of, sorry for the French, it's kind of not so nice when you want to cure a disease and go into the brain. So we've been developing with Professor Carpentier in Salpêtrière and the startup Carfera, a device which sends focused ultrasound into the brain. So basically, when you have this kind of tumor, the first thing that's going to happen, and maybe I try to be a bit quicker, is that you will operate the patient and remove the tumor. So here's the process. First thing, you have implanted the device, and you will inject to the patient microbubbles that should appear at. Okay, these microbubbles are then stimulated by the ultrasound that you send right here with the device. And so that's minimally invasive. You don't see that, the patient can stay with it. And so this ultrasound will basically play drum with the blood-brain barrier. And if I go a bit faster, okay, here are the bubbles playing drums. So what's the impact of that? You see the holes, the small holes here in the BBB, which is basically a gateway for your drug to enter into the brain. And so once you've done that, 20 minutes later, you do inject your drug right into the brain, and make the long story short, okay, so the theory is that your drug is going to massively go into the brain. Let me stop there. Okay, that's the theory. And so the goal is to concentrate the drug, and you know that the oncology drug usually have toxic by side effects. You want that on the tumor. You don't want that in the liver. You don't want that in the heart or anywhere else. And so the prototype is right here on the right-hand side. The team has basically been able to do phase 2 and is ongoing phase 3 clinical trials, multicentric. We multiply by 7 the penetration of drug in the brain with an impact of survival of the patient. which if confirmed by the multicenter study, is going to be major. Glioblastoma patient, I hope none of you or people in your family has had that, have a mid-expectant life expectancy of 18 months, and we have no cure at all. So there's big hope that by optimizing the opening of the BBB, we can enlarge the scope of medicine, antibodies, biologics, and so on, which can be tested and be efficient on this tumor. So that's the first example. Second example, by the way. Let's keep on with metabolism, and I'm going to mention gene therapy. So the two first programs, that's really in-house programs from the researcher, turning into clinical application, startup development, and hopefully market. BrainVectis is a startup company which we created from one of our research team from Nathalie Cartier. And basically here the key thing is to observe that in several neurodegenerative diseases, you've got a main issue, which is cholesterol accumulating within the brain. And cholesterol accumulating within the brain is basically going into the membrane of the cell and making them very rigid. And that's not good. They don't like that. If you're able to add some oxidation right here, you transform the cholesterol into hydroxycholesterol, and this molecule can just wash out of the brain and be eliminated. Okay, the enzyme to do that is called CYP46. So basically what we've done is develop a gene therapy stimulating the degradation of cholesterol into hydroxycholesterol. And guess what? It works for Huntington and maybe for other indication. And so we are currently having, so the company BrainVectis has now been bought by a bigger one, and we're running a clinical program, which is very exciting to us because it's a first of a kind of superfine local delivery into the brain to one specific location of the gene therapy. Again, you don't want your gene therapy to be everywhere. You want it to be exactly at the place where it's needed. And so Huntington patients are now included into this study with we hope, a transformative effect on their disease. This is another example, which is actually becoming a startup. One of our strange mathematicians, Stanley Doleman, is actually a great leader in modeling the way the brain evolves, both in terms of morphology and in terms of connection from one region to the other. And so he's developing deep AI tools, which he has applied to Alzheimer's disease, first by analyzing brain structure, and then integrating, in addition to brain structure, things like cognition, language, movement, and stuff like that. And this work has reached a point where you can make, and Stanley can make, individual prediction on when an Alzheimer's disease will become clinical, which means that you could have an Alzheimer's disease, but not yet a visible one, and that in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, it will become a clinical disease. And he can model also at an individual level if this Alzheimer is going to be a fast progressing Alzheimer's disease or a slow progressing Alzheimer's disease. The major impact of that is that you really fulfill the promise of developing a personalized and predictive medicine, because it's not about having large scale statistics of you may develop, you have 50% chance more developing Alzheimer or this or that, but you individually, based on what we measure, we can say you will develop or you will not, and this will be that kind of form. And again, this can be depressing, except that the pipelines of the industry now have many more new compounds arriving close to late stage development and even to the market. And so this kind of technology can both help better develop these compounds to check first what kind of patient will benefit from the drug, but also will open the way, a pathway to super early administration of drugs, because you will know that patients will develop an Alzheimer. And the key thing in doing that is that when your Alzheimer becomes clinical, you actually have lost many neurons, a bit too much. And so it would be much better if you can act 2 years before at a time when you are still normal, and you have kind of a reservoir of neurons that you can mobilize. And so Stanley is one of the researchers who recently created a startup called Kernel, Q-A-A-R-N-E-L. And maybe one last example to show you that not everything needs to be super high-tech or super biologic is a company created by a couple of postdocs of the Institute called My Brain Technologies. So the device you're seeing is very good to listen to Spotify and your favorite playlist, but it's also super nice because the electrodes that you can have here can stick to the parietal region of your brain and measure your stress and anxiety level, which is first useful, but then if the concept of brain-computer interface is that by seeing the way your brain is active with stress or no stress, you can act on that yourself. And so the program, that's why you see a phone on the picture, the program that we have developed with My Brain Technology has been to co-develop this device and validate the fact that by listening to some music and introducing some distortions of the music, you can give a sound marker to people that their level of stress is high or not. And also to fine-tune themselves to regulate the way the music is performed and then find the right track where stress level has been lowered. And so it's kind of a training program. And this is, and that's why I was willing to make this example, it's not a medical device. You can basically buy that online or stores. It's not a medical device, but it's a scientifically validated device helping you measure your stress level and act upon it. And this makes a key point about, I think, neuroscience and the way we can act. We definitely can have super high-tech stuff, very expensive, hard to develop, exciting. But there are plenty of things you can do by just learning basic principles on the way the brain works to develop cheap approaches, sleep monitoring or sleep coaching, diet and nutrition, physical activity, which can help you make go better. And this slide is to tell you that, yeah, so we do have 3 bioincubators. I think I have a slide on that. We started by 1, and because it was working kind of okay, we created a subsidiary to invest in them. And so we've got something like 20, 25 of them. And we now have 3 campuses, 1 for biotech companies, 1 for medtech, and 1 with Station F. And see, if you're not familiar with Paris, up here is the river. The Latin Quarter and all the exciting bars is by here. This is the Salpêtrière Hospital, and so this is the district where we do have our bioincubators. But the bars are not that far, I can tell you. And so this is the medtech campus, this is the digital campus, Station F, and this is the ICM biotech campus. Okay, and this is going to be the last slide. Yeah, we discussed with Gigi and the faculty team about neurotechnology, super exciting kind of sci-fi stuff and so on. And people think of the augmented man with a super strong memory, able to go to Mars, connect to computer and so on. The basic of that is the technology you see illustrated here is routine in a clinic. It's called deep brain stimulation. It's not as frightening as it looks. The concept is to stimulate one specific part of the brain in Parkinson's disease patient to restore movement. I did not bring a video, but it's just super striking. You can have Parkinson's patient unable to stand up and walk with this stimulation. And so here's autonomous battery. So you need fine neurosurgery, but this stimulation right in the near from the substantia nigra is going to basically relieve the disease and help the patient walk normally. Based on that, you've got many avenues for neurotechnologies, and that one is one that we will describe as ethical. You've got a diseased man whose dignity, or woman whose dignity is affected, who is not able to live his life because of the disease. You restore autonomy, and you restore the capacity to live a meaningful life. Neurotechnology today may tend, with some school of thought, to become that. You've seen that with Neuralinks and with others. Basically, not willing to repair people with diseases, but willing to fundamentally transform what we as humans are under reasons which are, well, why should we have a limited IQ? We could have the IQ, all of us could have the IQ of Einstein. We could have better memories. We could feel no stress. And on the surface, that looks interesting, right? Who wouldn't want to be better? It's just forgetting a couple of things. And that's about French vision. First thing you forget is that you don't understand the brain and you don't understand what is consciousness, what is your own identity. And so why would you risk having this implanted stuff, modifying the very root of what you are without understanding it? Second, when you have this kind of implanted stuff, which are AI based, they cannot be autonomous. They are controlled from an external device. Being controlled from an external device means your brain can be hacked at any time by someone who has enough power to do that. And so you become a puppet. Number three, the brain is plastic. So, and it can be kind of lazy. So if you supplement the task that it should perform by himself, it will basically shut down that. And so kind of lower its level of awareness and function because the technology is doing that for itself, for the brain. You know the examples of the GPS people, GPS using people who just dive into a lake because they follow the GPS. But there's a striking example which is seminal on GPS usage, which is that the taxi drivers in London using GPS have had their hippocampus, which is the region for spatial memory in the brain, becoming much thinner than before. So technology affects our brain in a way that should be anticipated and controlled. Last thing, maybe, is that these kind of technologies will be super expensive, very likely. And so what you, it's not that won't work. I'm pretty sure that in a couple of years, one of these technology will be validated and will multiply your capacity to learn new languages by 3 or your memory by 3. But it will be first super expensive. So only a few people will be able to buy that, which means that you create a humanity with 2 kinds of people. The people who have enough money to get augmented, and the other one, the second category of human beings. So ethically speaking, from a European standpoint, and I hope for your standpoint too, it's completely unacceptable. But the most fundamental stuff is that, guys, you don't know what you're doing. You don't even understand the brain, so don't touch it that much. And that's going to be the conclusion of my talk. I think we have ample ways to have better health, better mental health with biotherapies, with medtech, with data analysis. We can be techno-positive because techno will bring stupid, but we don't have to be techno-stupid and think that everything that the big tech is bringing will be helpful. And so we do claim, and let's say that's the French exception maybe, we do claim that tech is for living beings and we have to control what we are doing and be sure it's really going to have a positive impact. And I'll conclude with that. Thank you so much, guys.
Wow, thank you so much, Alexis. That I think it takes a moment for everyone to pause and reflect on the ethics behind healthcare and what's meaningful innovation and what some of the beautiful advancements are that we all probably didn't know about that are existing in today's society. We just needed to hear from your organization, from you, and to be enlightened by that. So thank you so much.
Well, really my pleasure.
We wanted to make sure to leave some time for folks to ask you some questions. So if anyone in the audience would like to ask Dr. Alexis Génin any questions, please feel free. we're very lucky to have his presence here. Let's see. Can you tell us more? Was this from the previous? Yeah, no, this is a new question. So can you tell us more about the hospital and clinical network? What clinical research opportunities does ICM or France offer that American researchers or companies should be aware of? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we do work with clinical networks with indication specialization. If I take the example of Parkinson, we have something like 30 centers all around France working under the same SOPs. And being able to tell you what is the national active file of PD patient if you want to include in your trials. So that's good. I think many countries can do that. What we maybe claim, it's kind of proudness of French people, we think the semiology in French, so the ability to really go in depth into the phenotype of patient, is maybe a little bit above the average. And that is precious when you, especially in the early stage of your clinical research, when you really want to have the early signals of efficacy of your compound, and that at the stage where the clinical scales will not be good enough to see that. We've got this culture coming from Charcot in the 19th century of really understanding in depth every single little thing you can see about the patient. That's one of the added value. The other one, we have done massive digital tech developments with the AI school that Stephanie was mentioning. So we've got plenty of fancy stuff that you can use for the clinical trials.
Thank you. Another question, what is your approach for techno-positive technologies? So do you have an example of what's the techno-positive?
Sure. Well, the first thing is, except in disastrous diseases, you should be non-invasive, because once you are invasive and you enter into the brain, you change the balance of networks of the brain, and that's very hard to control. But then for non-invasive technologies, the small element that I show you, the data you generate and the EEG data can be something personal, and it can tell something about you if people are able to analyze that. So you should have this very transparent thing that first, you as a user should be able to get free from the technology at any time. Once you get better, you should be able to put the technology somewhere else and not on your body. And at any time when you use the technology, you need to be able to completely control the data which is generated. I know that Facebook, for instance, is planning stuff on EEG with the idea of then better understanding your behavior. Okay, but that's not the kind of things that I would think as positive.
So I think, like in general, a variety of perspectives may be around on various approaches to health in general. So how, going back to how you're with your closing, because it's food for thought for people to think that there's an option for both scenarios, right? Where you are able to cater to people who have that same approach, that they don't want something to enter their brain, but to know that with health innovation, there are multiple approaches to tackling disease, I think is something that is important for people to have access to what their choice, their approach to their care is when they're making that decision with their providers, right? And so I think that's something to also be aware of, that people have different needs and choices, and innovation should cater to that too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think if there's a key take-home message, that sometimes innovation and meaningful innovation does not need to be super tech intensive. So we know from the scientific literature that things like physical activity can be super powerful for depression. And so it's not about saying, okay, you don't take your antidepressant. Yeah, you do take your antidepressant, but the real medicine of the future, as we would hope it to become, would be something integrated. Yes, you've got your drug, but then you've got coaching on how to step out of the stage where you are with physical activity, with even food and nutrition. The link with the microbiota is just massive. And all of that integrated, we do think could become a meaningful health with drug, tech, and non-medical, but scientifically proven approaches.
You. One question here. What do you think are the main challenges to deep brain stimulation being more accepted by potential patients? What would be some strategies to overcome the invasiveness?
Yeah, it's from Freddie. Well, in our experience, it's quite well accepted because the impact on daily life is just massive in Parkinson. There's a small risk with the surgery procedure, but which is something like 3% of risk of adverse event. So it's not massive. It's just that the criteria to be eligible, at least in Europe, to the deep brain stimulation are quite strict. So not every single Parkinson patient can claim for a deep brain stimulation. But the phenomenon we have is more that they will kind of really hope to be eligible than the contrary.
Thank you so much, Alexis. I think that is all the questions I'm seeing for today. So wanted to thank everyone who stayed to enjoy this really meaningful conversation and presentation because the brain is fragile and neuroscience is a hot area. So to hear from you, Alexis, and what's coming out from your institution was really important. And I think that bridge between the crosstalk with Boston and France, it goes to show you that there's a lot of researchers that are doing great things. And so if we can bridge those gaps with events like this and programs, now I hope everyone is familiar with another expert across the pond, but also an institution, a hospital, a research center, a network, and a new hub for France through your talk. So I hope everyone learned something new and appreciates a new contact too. So thank you all for joining. Thank you so much to all the speakers today for your time, effort in preparing, and apologies if you get bombarded with LinkedIn connections, but I actually don't apologize because that was the whole purpose. If you start getting pinged by people, and really hope that this is the beginning of many new conversations that I don't need to be a part of, and just so that science can begin to flourish and conversations transatlantically can continue as a result of this. So thank you, and hope to see everyone who is in Boston tonight at the Part 2. And I hope that you all have an appreciation for a different kind of French cuisine. It's the health innovation cuisine. And there's going to be a lot more to come. Thank you all.
Thank you, Gigi.